So, Pierluigi Nervi, 1891-1971, a great engineer, one of the greatest, and also the one who edited, in my opinion, the best architecture history. He was the editor of something that no architect was. So he took an engineer to actually I don't know if he was, maybe he even produced it with his own money. I don't know. He was the editor of the great series of books, 18 volumes, The World History of Architecture, which I strongly recommend to anyone who loves the history of architecture. And of course, there are also 2 volumes about modern architecture. So Nervi, as you see, was born the 21st of June, 1891, was an Italian engineer and architect. He studied at the University of Bologna, graduating in 1913. So at 22, Nervi taught as a professor of engineering at Rome University from 1946 to 1961, and is known worldwide as a structural engineer and architect, and for his innovative use of reinforced concrete, especially with numerous notable thin shell structures worldwide. The art of the structure, indeed, or you do say the art of the engineer. A master of parametric design before parametry. There was no parametry then, but he did a design that could qualify as being so-called parametric. This was the man, and again, doesn't matter. He's an engineer, a painter, a writer, a musician, an architect. The invitation is to live intensely, passionately, not in a dry way for what you do. As Doshi, the great Indian architect who received the Pritzker Prize recently said, you know, love what you do and do what you love. Of course, it's easy to do, to say, and it's difficult to do. But life is not worth living otherwise. So love what you do and do what you love. And not only do what you love, but do with love what you love. So here is the engineer, Pierluigi Nervi, an intense man. And you have to be intense, because if you are in love, you cannot be otherwise. That's it. So let's promote the idea of the architect as an adventurer, as a pioneer, someone who discovers new things, even if those things might appear at first foolish. Einstein, the great scientist, said that if something doesn't seem foolish at first, it's a lost idea, it's a lost thing. And I would agree. You know, that's why we shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes. This terror of making mistakes doesn't have anything to do with art, including the art of engineering and including the art of architecture. Work without fear and don't be afraid of making mistakes. There is no such thing in art, mistake. There isn't. We are not accountants to add or subtract wrongly, no. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. There are no mistakes in art. There is good art and there is less good art, but they are not really mistakes. Even a so-called bad art is not a mistake. The word mistake is inappropriate. So 1949, this is an exhibition hall that he created in Turin, in Torino, in Italy. And you see the purity of the structure, you know, and its coherence, and its, I would even say it's exaltation. It's, well, it's not an expressionist exaltation, but it is exaltation. And it is because of that exaltation that it becomes art. And Walter Gropius was totally right when he said both the craftsman and the artist are, they are both rooted in craft. The only difference between the artist and the craftsman is that the artist is an exalted craftsman. It is exaltation that makes the craftsman become an artist. And it is the exaltation which makes the engineer become an artist. And I would go further. It is the exaltation which makes the builder becomes an architect. Because if you don't have that exaltation, you don't have that emotion. And without that emotion, without that passion, without the warmth of that passion, you are not doing architecture. But as I said, because I don't want to be misunderstood, sometimes beneath a calm appearance boils a volcano, and this could happen as well. So there are sometimes passionate, very passionate beings who appear to be less so. Like for example, people from the northern part of Europe, now of the Scandinavians. They appear to have no passion. Like I remember, watching movies by Ingmar Bergman, a Scandinavian man, Swede. And in those movies, there is an immense passion, an immense tension, an immense intensity. But the appearance at first might be that it's not the case. So the issue is not so simple, but it doesn't matter. Well, what it does matter is that passion is within, that it manifests itself explicitly or implicitly. This is maybe the second issue. The important thing is that passion exists, and in Nervi's case existed. And it existed even at the level, as I said, that if there is, in my opinion, the greatest series of books on architecture are intimately connected with the name Pierluigi Nervi, because he initiated this great publication of 18 volumes of the history of world architecture. It wasn't an architect, it wasn't an engineer. And I think this is because the engineer had and has a longing, because the engineer is also a human being. He's not a calculator, he's not a machine. Yes, he does his job by calculations, but deep down, he is a human being. He also has passion, he also has feelings, he also has, a quest, is sensitive to beauty. I'm talking about the best engineers. And look at this. This was done by Nervi. Could we say there is no beauty here? Impossible. And I repeat, this is because of exaltation, because of that feeling, that maybe mysterious emotion that makes you want to fly, if this doesn't sound too banal. The humans achieve brilliance when they are animated by lofty ideas. If they don't have these loftier ideas, they risk of being unable to leave the gutter. I said this before, maybe even yesterday or the day before yesterday. I quoted from Oscar Wilde, who was extremely good at, in a few words, of saying a lot. He said, we are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking up to the stars. And Pierluigi Nervi, from the very gutter we are all in, looked up to the stars. And bravo to him. That's why we talk of him today. I mean, look at this structure. It's like we concrete, but it's actually an embroidery. It is an embroidered structure, an embroidered architecture. Now here he worked with Marcel Breuer and Bernard Zehrfuss, UNESCO headquarters in Paris. I don't know exactly what he did here because there were 3 people, but I imagine all things having to do with structure, and especially audacious structure, is because of him, like that canopy above the entrance. This one, look at this. Could you say that there is no exaltation here? Of course not, there is. Maybe the engineer is here and the architect is here. Who is more exalted? I would say the engineer. I remember what Le Corbusier said. Le Corbusier said, I love engineers, I love painters and engineers, but I don't love architects. How do you explain it? Because the painters and the engineers, they do their thing. It's true, their task is in a way more clear. because, you know, the painter does painting and the engineer does engineering, but the architect has to negotiate between various fields. So his activity is a little bit murky, but in essence, all three of them become poets when they are all three of them exalted, like Pierluigi Nervi was, without doubt, when he created this beautiful canopy, which is dramatic, but isn't life dramatic? Also, not in the close vicinity of this building, in fact, part of the campus is a chapel, a very nice chapel by Tadao Ando, a cylinder, kind of a meditation chapel. And in front of the sculpture is another exalted engineer. In front of the canopy that we see here by Nervi, there is the work of another exalted engineer, and I'm talking about Alexander Calder, the sculptor who did this mobile. And he did many other sculpture, many other works, and I invite you to contemplate his work. He was a great sculptor. And for Romanians here, there is a book published by Dan Coma. You can find in the second-hand bookstores, and it's not it's a very affordable book, but it's a beautiful book about Alexander Calder, this very engineer who did this, who dedicated himself actually to sculpture, and he achieved brilliance in the field of sculpture. And Dan Coma knew him personally, and the book contains, you know, impressions about the dialogue and so on. It's a nice book, and you can buy it with a few RON. Okay, UNESCO, Paris, an engineer and two architects. Actually, three poets working together. Again, architecture as an adventure. And you see even here, the other engineer, perhaps jealous of Nervi being here, he wanted to be here too, is the sculptor. Bravo to all of them. I would say that a great architecture doesn't need finishes. It doesn't. It is sufficient to itself when it is exposed, so to speak, exposed concrete, exposed wood, exposed brick. Of course, you know, a certain level of vulnerability exists, just as in the case of a human being. A human being who is very honest is vulnerable. But there is something beautiful about that vulnerability. Let's welcome truth. Let's welcome vulnerability, because there is, besides the fragility, there is something very, very nourishing, and we need truth. That's why in many cases good architecture doesn't have you know, that paraphernalia of protection, as Rem Koolhaas calls it. You know, it doesn't need makeups. You know, a powerful, full human being, whole human being, doesn't need makeup. It doesn't matter. I mean, truth is interior, and then when it becomes exterior, without too many screens of hiding, although masks are also very potent in the field of, even in the field of architecture. But it's a difference between, and in fact, we are going to see in the work of Smiljan Radic, the last work that I will present is a theater where he hid the internal composition of what he was building there. So sometimes what I'm trying to say is there is a difference between an honestly displayed mask and an appearance which tries to hide without acknowledging that it is an appearance. This is what I'm trying to refer to. If you use the mask in an honest way, so to speak, you hide, but you are telling everybody that you are actually hiding. This is different, I think, than from the misleadings that you know, excessive so-called finishing could lead to. So you see here is you know, exposed concrete. just as it is exposed concrete in the structures of Tadauando, since I talked about Tadauando. The Pirelli Tower, a great building from 1950, collaborating with the architect Gio Ponti. And look at the beauty of the structure. You know, it's almost like a bird in flight by Brancusi. Although it is, you know, almost rectangular, but well, not really, because you see there is a slight curvature here. These are sophisticated things, but we look at the plan and you look at the section, and you already know that these two people, Gio Ponti and Pierluigi Nervi, were searching for beauty, and they found it. Again, it is exaltation. If you have that exaltation in you, you are searching for the best. You are searching for the wings. You are searching for transforming the cane or the crutch into a wing. In other words, you want to fly. Metaphorically, of course, you don't have to fly literally. For that, you use the planes. But as Brancusi knew, the essence of flight is not that. It's not on airports, and it's not in the planes. It's in the inner flight. And that has to do with the exaltation that I mentioned. Look, even during construction, you can tell that this is a good building that is being erected. And it was done 70 years ago. Look at its elegance. It's almost sublime. What is this elegance? Again, I would say it has to do with that exaltation, which I mentioned. You know, here on the left, we have buildings. Here we have architecture. Here we have building, architecture, building. Pierluigi Nervi and Gio Ponti. Milan. Palazzetto dello Sport, Rome, 1958. Well, unfortunately left, I think it was refurbished and also transformed a little bit, but at times, I mean, at a certain time, it was left in this stage. What can we say? Sometimes, I mean, Italians are so rich in architecture and art that sometimes they neglect certain things, especially buildings. I have seen great buildings left in, you know, in a state that, you know, was not the most desirable. But what can you do? When you have so many riches at one point, plus it's difficult to have, to take care of all of them, I imagine. But anyway, they continue, the Italians continue. Look at the beauty of this structure. You know, it's elegant, and it's also robust, and it's also, I mean, it's sincere, but it's also, as I said, elegant. It's very, very nice. And you understand how the forces work, you know, the structural forces somehow. You know, this is what a good engineer does. Look at this, you know, yes, it is central. Yes, it is centripetal. Yes, it is maybe a little bit too predictable for us. Still, we are dealing with an embroidered structure. And being embroidered, it arrives at, in the field of art. And look at these columns. It's not that they are, you know, not perpendicular on the slab, but look at their shape. It's where calculation meets emotion. Calculation plus emotion makes that the art of the structure. Stadium in Rome, 1957. He could have done this roofing, you know, this canopy in a less exalted way. Well, again, he probably longed to become an architect, and he did become an architect. Not in the sense that he got the architect's diploma, but in the sense of his longing for an emotional excellence in his work. Palazzo del Lavoro, Turin, 1961, so 60 years ago. Look at the beauty of the structure, you know? I mean, when we see beauty, I think we are transformed. Something happened to us. Our heart begins to warm up. And when the heart, I mean, Le Corbusier said the same thing, something touches our heart. This is when art comes into being. You know, and if it doesn't touch your heart, then it's not art. It's clear brilliance here. Again, through calculations, Nervi, just like Kant, arrived at the immeasurable. The immeasurable has to do with beauty, which transcends the measurable and transcends you know, the predictable and transcends yes, calculation, as I said. This is done through calculation, but what animated Nervi in essence was a feeling. You know, if he was led by numbers, not in a mystical way, but in a prosaic way, he would not have arrived. He would not have arrived here. This is about beauty, obviously. Less gifted or ambitious in the good sense of the word engineer would not have created this in this way. Because here he arrived at aesthetics. Again, embroidery on a large scale. Look at this column. It's a solar column. It would have been admired by the great Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, who promoted monotheism in ancient Egypt, the belief in Ra, in the sun. Well, Pierluigi Nervi, I would say, he would have believed, and he did believe in the sun as well. I mean, even the drawings are beautiful. I mean, structural drawings, technical drawings. A good structure is beautiful even at the level of what is called technical drawings. I have seen working drawings by Louis Kahn. They were all beautiful. Not because he searched for some kind of a narcissistic, you know, beauty, you know, self-contemplating itself in, no, it's the inner beauty. Fire consumes Pierluigi Nervi's Palazzo del Lavoro. Okay, there are tragedies happening. What can we do? But, you know, the quest for excellence continues. Sacro Cuore, Bell Tower, Firenze, 1962. Look at this tower again. You know, it's part of a church, but would you say, I think Brunelleschi would have loved it because Nervi was not timid. Yes, he was building in Florence, in Firenze, but he was not dwarfed by the brilliance of the past. He contributed with his own genius to the present, and he did so convincingly. This is the way to go. It doesn't matter you build in an old town or an old environment. You assert yourself. You assert the present. The present doesn't mean you are ignorant or even impertinent towards that past. No, but you assert your time. You have to assert your time, as old Maria Olbrich wrote on the facade of the Secession building in Vienna, in Austria, to every time it's art, and to art it's freedom. So Pierluigi Nervi here did just that. To his time, it's art, and to its art, it's freedom. You are going to see later on a cathedral he contributed to structurally also in a brilliant way. Paper mill, Mantua, Italy, 1962. Look at this. It's a mill. It's an industrial building. You say, wait a minute, we are not on Mars or on the moon to build something like this. Why not? I mean, any building could become architecture. It doesn't matter its function. It doesn't have to be a cultural center or a church. It can be a factory, a paper mill. But look at the beauty and the inventiveness of the structure. It becomes monumental. It becomes sculptural. It becomes art. I guess this is Mr. Nervi, the one with the camera. Well, there are others with camera. Anyway, why did they bring their cameras? Exactly because the building was an adventure. Exactly because the building had levels of exaltation. Exactly because the building became architecture, became art. Because you are not going to take pictures of a banal building. There must be something to inspire your camera, so to speak, as well. And that something has to do with art. It has to do with feeling, with emotion. I mean, the best sculptor in the world would admire this structure because it is plastically relevant and inspiring. Pierluigi Nervi, Architecture as a Challenge. Indeed, architecture as a challenge. George Washington Bridge bus station in New York City. This one I passed by one day and I didn't know it was by Nervi, but it attracted as Corbusier. I was myself in a bus and I passed by this building and I said, this is architecture, but I didn't know it was built by Pierluigi Nervi. I didn't know who did it, but something struck me. Something touched my heart, and that is the coherence, the beauty, the sculpturalness, the intensity of the structure. Again, no finishes, exposed concrete, it's fine. It's here. Calatrava himself, he was trained as an engineer. And I've heard, in fact, today someone told me that even Imre Makovic, the Hungarian architect, that he was trained as an engineer. Bravo to them. Such engineers who achieve beauty and have humanistic concerns should receive our affection. Look at this column. Isn't it amazing how it is twisted? And look at the bottom also, it's mysterious. It almost doesn't touch What is going on here? This is the acrobat that Le Corbusier wrote about and Doshi quoted, you know, and I'm sure this was not just capriciousness. It's also an architectural result of rigorous calculation, but it's also intriguing and provocative even. A bus station, but beauty can manifest itself everywhere. And look at the color. Now, why did he do it in this way? Because in a way, the engineer, like the architect and like the lover, wants to fly. That's why. Wants to fight off the, you know, the constraints of gravity and of limitations. We need love exactly for that, to give a different meaning to life. Without love, what would life be? It's a brilliant column, we must confess. Totally unexpected. It's an event. The column is an event. There are other events in this building, like in other works by. Now we arrive at the Cathedral of Saint Mary of the Assumption in San Francisco, where he worked with Pietro Belluschi, 1967. Here you'll see other levels of brilliance. Look at it again, you know, there is the cross, but then there is something else which complicates matters in the good sense of the word. You know, it's the womb of the cathedral becoming a longing for the above, and there is this transition from the womb to the cross. If this part would not have been there, the cross would have been, you know, maybe too powerful or too strong in the dry sense of the word. I think this is beautiful, and this is all done structurally. It's not just an inflation, you know. It's not an inflated thing. You'll see it from the inside. It starts from within. And look at this shadow here, you know, the arabesque of the shadow, which tells us that the cross is not a rationalistic imposition on the human landscape. Here there is a negotiation between the cross and the organic world. Because of this, and the shadow does it brilliantly, shows clearly that it brings a softness to the building. And look at the inside, it's majestic. I regret, you know, no one from the Orthodox Church here is here to look at this. This is architecture, and what we are doing in Bucharest now is not architecture. That immense effort that the country makes to build that nonsensical cathedral, that is not architecture. Here is architecture. Look at the ceiling. I mean, you know, again, embroidered architecture. It's this where the roundness of the world becomes cross, and the cross becomes roundness, and they support each other, you know, and you also have the diagonals. This is yes, there is sophistication, but there is also honesty. This is true architecture. And what we are doing now in Bucharest is not architecture, and it's a shame. Yes, these walls, the pedantic one would say, wait a minute, they are dirty. No, they are not dirty, they are alive. And look at this also. Bravo to them, bravo to the engineer, and bravo to the architect. And again, the brilliance of the engineer is shown here. You know, this is an honest column which shows the tensions, the structural tensions within, and is not afraid to twist when it is supposed to be twisting. what does this show? In my opinion, it shows that life has its fragility, its moments of great tension, but maybe its beauty derives exactly from this fragility. This point, both in life and in art, where contradiction even is welcomed, when the transition from the horizontal to the vertical becomes dramatic, because it is a birth giving, and like any birth, it implies effort, it implies even pain, but it is in essence an assertion of the beauty of life. It is a yes, but not a simplistic yes. It's an earned yes, which is different from a demagogical or a simplistical kind of yes. It's easy to say yes. Some people say the optimist is a coward compared to a pessimist. I wouldn't go so far, but I think you need a duality, pessimism, optimism, and it's like going through darkness towards light. And that's why Nikita Stănescu, the important Romanian poet, said, darkening darkness, thus the gates of light. So you transcend darkness, you transcend, the tensions inherent in both art and life, but you don't neglect them. Somehow you transform them into light. Like here, the building grows through an organic transition towards the cross. I mean, when you think about this, all this giant roofing system is supported in, I mean, look at the fragility of but it's enough. It's enough, and obviously when you have on your side an engineer like Pierluigi Nervi, you can be sure it is enough. The Vatican, 1971. Now this is a more, but still, you can tell that the engineer didn't give up on his aesthetical concerns. This meeting between the measurableness of the calculations and the immeasurableness of the artistic concerns moves me. It's where the stringencies of necessity meet beauty. I don't know, I found there are some comments about this structure, about this thing here, I think, or connecting with the head of a reptile. I didn't understand very well. I mean, I see here the eyes, I guess. Someone, but I guess it's about the meeting between the organism of nature in whatever form and the building, You look at this picture and you might see, in a way, the head of a reptile. But in essence, I think it was about the quest of the engineer and the architect, maybe in this case was the same person, to achieve a structure which was organic. Now, this was not done by Pierluigi Nervi, but it's interesting, though, that at the highest level of authority in the Catholic Church, they invited such a almost surreal artistic presence behind them, behind the Pope. Occulta symbolos. Well, you know, there are all kinds of speculations, but I think a good work invites to multiple interpretations. And the beauty of the building site during construction is also to be recognized and acknowledged. And I don't know, why not? Why not? Let's welcome the reptile too within the church. Is part of the kingdom of God, no? That reptile. This is 1971, another, you know, sports arena. Now these are maybe a little bit predictable because we saw early works done in a similar way in Rome. But in this case, also the columns are dancing. So when I hear an engineer that the column has always to be vertical, you know, and the beam has to be horizontal, well, look at his columns, you know, and look at the twisted. They are twisted, and you know, I believe that Nervi was closer to the truth of the way structural forces manifest themselves within the structural elements than the one who thinks in a very, you know, static way. No, it's not like this. So what I see here, I see an engineer who wants the structure to be alive, not to be dead, not to be simplistically, you know, mimicking being so-called resolved and rational and so on. No, no, a good structure needs to be alive as well. And to be alive, you need to assume a certain level of organicity, because life itself is organic. Okay, now we go to the second architect that I will talk about today, and that is Smiljan Radic, a very interesting architect from Chile, this country which keeps provoking us with excellent architecture. We know of Aravena, and Aravena we will talk tomorrow, but Smiljan Radic, who actually came, you know, he has Croatian, I think his parents emigrated from Croatia to Chile. He was born in Chile, but his connections with Croatia are still strong. So he was born in Santiago in 1965. He's an internationally recognized Chilean architect of Croatian heritage. Radic graduated in 1989 in architecture at the Catholic University of Chile and established his own office in 1995. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. I hear a noise in the background. Thank you. Many of his projects are small scale, such as dwellings and installation designs that bridge across various cultural traditions. Radic was selected to design the 2014 Serpentine Gallery Pavilion in London. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Thank you. So, Smiljan Radic, here is the man. And again, a good architect of both sexes, is a pioneer, is an adventurer, discovers new things. And he did, and he does. Although he doesn't look too happy. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Thank you. He looks rebellious, although, you know, sometimes rebelliousness doesn't have to be explicitly externalized. Drawings. I'm sorry, I hear a noise and it probably comes from a microphone. Please turn off the microphone unless you want to say something, which you are welcomed, of course. You are going to see this house he built. And this is the Serpentine Gallery that he built in London. In 2014, it started with this sketch. And then it went through the measurable. So here we see the immeasurable of feeling. Then we see the measurableness that the computer helped him to go through. And then in the end, he arrived at the immeasurableness of feeling, of emotion. And these are, of course, you know, digital studies. He built it. Now, we start with a very interesting, and unfortunately, I couldn't find pictures of great resolution, but still I have a few pictures of this very interesting charcoal burner's house. He built a very early work from 1998, very primitive and archaic, and I think very, very inspiring. He took himself a picture of this structure, and this was built, I mean, if there is a sustainable architecture, this is it. And it was built with earth and with clay. And I don't know exactly what its function was, well, you know, a burner. But it's beautiful as architecture. And it is mysterious. And something like this you can still find in the so-called vernacular architecture. Something that the so-called educated or cultivated architect doesn't look very often with affection towards, but I think that architecture deserves affection. You could call it naive, but it's not naive. It's telluric, it's earthy, in a way, it's better than everything else he did. I know I say something maybe a little bit, you know, questionable, but I like very much this, and I regret for the moment I don't have better pictures. Smiljan Radic in Chile. Now we arrive at this house from 2003 to 2005. He didn't build a lot, but he built some very interesting things. At that time, he was in opposition to what we already saw. This is a prismatic house. He built several, actually, and you know, of high quality, actually, you know, and these are large houses. Yes, these are not, you know, small apartments, you know, for ouvriers, for proletarians. But I think his buildings do not insult what we see here. And what we see here is the beauty of nature, of course, which is always surprising and always extremely, extremely inspiring. Chile has very good architecture and very good landscape architecture. They also have a Pritzker Prize with Aravena, but it's not about the prize. It's about what makes this country so you know, significant in architecture. Even Amereida, the Ciudad Abierta that I talk about sometimes, is also in Chile. They welcome experiment. They welcome the freshness of a modernity which is still with us, and it's hard to replace it. I mean, there are many swimming pools around, but not too many where also you see in the proximity of the swimming pool also, you know, sink, you know, with water, running water. It's interesting, the vicinity of both. I think static water and flowing water, if you use it, and then of course you have the immensity of the ocean. So you have three kinds of manifestations of water here. This, you know, the static water of the swimming pool, the running water in the sink, and the ocean, which is both static and dynamic. They have lots of stones there, and he uses stone in his architecture, sometimes quite convincingly. The copper house, he loved at that time at least copper. So this house constitutes a second tryout with copper as the material of its outer facing. In the small town of Nercon in the south of Chile, the undulating texture of the copper seemed to take on a historic quality by emulating the one that was used until the beginning of the 20th century in the houses and churches of Chiloé, faced in galvanized steel. In this building, the modulated texture, 38.5 by 95 centimeters with a thickness of 0.5 centimeter of ribbed electrolytic copper, also imitates certain general aspects abounding in the area. The heavy layers of drooping tiles, the deformation in the geometry of the pitch of the roofs due to successive extensions and bouts of decay, the deep shadows these roof slopes produce, and the continuous texture of their outer skin. It's still, you'll see, he also experimented with different kinds of architecture. He seems to have some doubts about the perfectly Cartesian structure, and there are interesting things going on here. It's still a transitional period, I think, in his creation. That's probably him here, sitting on that chair. Now, I actually don't know if this house is his or not. It doesn't say it is his, but it might be. I don't know. If it is his, he's not doing very badly, because it is a large house. So, you know, it's an interesting house. Anyway, as I said, my presentations are just invitations to further study the work of the one I'm trying to pay homage to. And so now everyone can continue the study of any subject, because we have at our disposal a lot. And I take my images. I never travel to Chile. I also take them from the web. This is truly great today. You know, you don't even have to go to the library in order to have access to a subject, to study a subject that interests you. It's enough if I can stir up a flame, and that's my intention, to stir up a flame. This is what this is why I say often that I don't try to give information to generate, to offer information but inspiration. If I can inspire you to, when we end our meeting, to go immediately to what, or not so immediately, it doesn't have to be immediately, but if you go to, if something remained with you and you say, wait a minute, well, the presentation ended, but I'm still curious about Smiljan Radic. Let me search for him. And you can do that today, just as we do. Now the architect left from that chair. He left something on the floor. I don't know what that is. Anyway, the light still comes from above, and the beautiful misty, foggy landscape is still outside to be seen through the window. Now, I don't know about this giant bed here, which looks a little bit, anyway. It's almost like he distorted Mies. You know, if you compare this building with the Farnsworth building by Mies, you see that the architect today is not so happy any longer to manipulate in a, not placid, because what Mies did was not placid at all. But distortions seem to be more appropriate for our time. And you see them here. You know, he could have easily, the rationalist would have placed this pole exactly in the center, and he would have repeated the situation here on the right side. No, there is asymmetry here, and there are surprises that have to do with the different time we live in. It's possible it is his own house. Now these drawings on that I took from Arch Daily, they are useful, but they are so pale and so grayish, and so that and unfortunately, I have a few here. For the one who wants to study them, of course, you can study them, but they are, but maybe they should be like this, discrete. Here, this is a little bit too discrete, or anyway. In a way, his building is a discrete organism, a geometrical organism, but still an organism. A geometry which is longing to become an organism, meaning organic. Now, this is a restaurant. He won a competition for this restaurant in Santiago de Chile. This project won a public competition convoked by the municipality, and in 2005 for this restaurant. The restaurant is sited at the northeast end of the park, a work by that architect that is still under construction. So this is the restaurant here. And I imagine he did also the landscaping, although sometimes he works with a landscape designer. It's interesting in a way to compare Nervi with Radic, you know, because here we also have a large structure, roofing structure supported by, in these points, by what appears to be some kind of, I imagine they artificially made stones. Or unless they found and they cut them in this way. He uses large scale stones sometimes in his works. To me, it's a little bit strange when I see a flattened stone like this. I know in Machu Picchu, the Incas, they built with cut stones to size in incredible ways. But, and I don't know how they do it. how they did it. Personally, I also have some reticence about making holes through stones, but that's my maybe subjectivity. Here is the restaurant in red. Mestizo. Again, unfinished, so-called unfinished concrete, exposed concrete, but in its you know, raw sincerity, I think it achieves aesthetical qualities. Now, a restaurant is a restaurant, you know. I don't think it would be really appropriate to make a restaurant look like a chapel. So, Casa A, San Clemente, 2008, an initial sketch. And it's also called the Prism House. So if you search for it on the web, you can just type Prism House, Radic, and you arrive at this very interesting house. It is interesting, you know, it is maybe, if you judge superficially, you'd say, another, you know, house with a triangulated roofing, sloping roof, but there is more to it. It's very original. And again, the way he distorts, you know, complete or so-called perfect flatness. So instead of using a flat surface or podium and then some steps, he distorts the flatness of the podium. Interesting idea. It's an excellent house, which shows its distinctiveness from nature, and yet it connects with nature. It's a house which is both modern and primitive. But this could have been almost a chapel in the forest. It could have been. If inside, instead of a living room and, you know, that insinuation of a kitchen and so on, you would have had a cross and maybe a few chairs, it could have been a chapel. And actually the connection between a house and the chapel is ancient. One is the house of man, the other one is the house of God. They are both houses in a primordial sense. Now, this is a very interesting house. He called it the house for the poem of the right angle, of course, in reference to Le Poème de l'angle droit, the poem of the right angle by Le Corbusier. And he wrote that he actually inspired himself from one page, so to speak, of that book, which with an artwork by Le Corbusier. Each page represents an artwork by Le Corbusier, a lithograph called The Flesh. And I searched for it, and I'm familiar with the book, but I couldn't find that particular page where he talks that there is the body of a woman, there is a hand, and there is a man here. And, you know, he has some speculations about the drawing. But all in all, is one of the most remarkable private residences or houses built in recent years. And here it is. Again, in a beautiful landscape, in a forest, but the house is asserting the creativity of the human being properly. And even inside, has very interesting things happening. We are going to see them. Is truly one of the most interesting private residences built, rather recently. And of course, there are so many being built. So to make yourself remarked in the field of architecture with a private house is not so easy. But he did it. He did it because he did a building which is infused with that, as I call it, the exaltation, which makes the craftsman become an artist. Here again, I'm more and more tempted to write something or think further about how he places the bed in his buildings. Here I have also a feeling that there is a certain, I don't know, I don't want to use the word, but there is something rhetorical about, we saw previously another picture with a large, queen size, king size bed. Here again, it's something, what I see, I will be honest with you. Well, because the bed is inevitably associated with Eros, of course it's associated with sleeping, but also with Eros. But I see also Thanatos in the way he places the bed. I also see Thanatos, meaning death, Eros and Thanatos, love and death. Somehow, it's maybe I'm talking nonsense now. It's possible, but this is what I feel. Anyway, the geometry of the building in some parts of the building is as it is here, distortions, fragmentations, angles. So it's not the right angle, although he started being inspired by Le Poème de l'angle droit, the poem of the right angle. Again, a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful landscape. What can we do? But the house itself is an event within the forest. And look at the plan itself. It shows a dynamic quest for something. This is an artwork within the house, and the artwork has its meaning within the house. It's not just any kind of artwork, and it's not a placid little artwork, hanged on a wall. No, it's something else, and you are going to see it. And its role within the anatomy of the building is important. It is one of the best, I would say one of the best private residences built, in recent years. Here you see the artwork that I mentioned, and we'll see two more pictures or so with it. Here. Now, why would he place this within the house? Because the house with its geometry, which is not strict, but geometry in itself has a level of strictness. Here is that organicity, but it is brought to a level of abstraction. This lyrical undulation of the artwork is balancing the angular geometry of the house. It's in a way the snake of life. Very nice. And then the great openings in the roof, which bring light in a way to redeem the drama of these contortions that we look at here. Now, a winery. This work to me, in my opinion, his later works, because he began to receive larger commissions, although he built a bus stop in Austria. It has qualities. It's just that I'm not sure a winery should receive such cosmic connotations, you know. But wineries in general have money, and so he built this thing here, this installation. It's interesting, it's provocative, but when you think of the function, you know, is the, although some people think that wine is sacred, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I think in the wrong terms. Maybe there is something cosmical or sublime about wine. This kind of you know, big radius curvature or circle evokes something else. If you see this image, you wouldn't think that it is a winery. Well, it is a winery. From afar, you might say that it is, I don't know what, you know, it's certainly you wouldn't think it's a winery. But it has a surreal, you know, appearance, which could invite one to think that in a way wine has to do with, you know, running away in a way from reality through the effects of wine. And, you know, it's maybe in a way it's about dreaming, escaping gravity, escaping the limitations of life and plunging into a euphoria that intoxication brings in. I don't know. I'm trying to understand exactly why he made this work in this way. These stones are almost like fallen stars. Again, the drawings as they are published on Arch Daily, I can't look at them for too long. But maybe that's what the architect provided in this way. So they are too pale. I don't know why he made them like this. Or anyway, Serpentine Gallery, 2014. He was the least known architect who was invited to build a Serpentine Pavilion, a Serpentine Gallery Pavilion. And he did something interesting and different from the other architects. This material, he also used this membrane, this you know, skin that he used for this pavilion. He also used in the last work I will show, which is a theater. It appears, you know, you might think from afar that it's concrete. No, it's actually very, very lightweight and thin. It's translucent. Light goes through it. His beloved stones, I only hope he didn't bring them from Chile to England, to the UK, United Kingdom. But this enclosure, this shell is interesting. You know, it's a fragile enclosure. Now a bus stop, a little structure that he built. In my opinion, he didn't do such a great job here because it's all glass. And I understand that within a bus stop, perhaps you should, there must be some transparency because you want to be so-called safe. But I don't know, bus stop, I know many are done with glass, but he didn't really escape the predictable easily. I mean, he did this thing here, which I don't know what it is, but otherwise the box is rather a banal prism of glass. Anyway, he did it. He did it like this. I don't think it's his most remarkable work at all. There were others because this village or little town in Austria had the initiative to invite well-known architects to build a bus stop. And there are others. Fujimoto built there and even Wang Shu. And it was an interesting initiative. And here is the architect waiting for the bus. But I don't know, this was moved either into a museum or I don't know. It's obviously not where it was supposed to be. A community hub, we are approaching the end of this presentation on Smiljan Radic. He did here a fire station. So architects Smiljan Radic, Eduardo Castillo, and Danilo Lascano teamed up on this community hub in San Pedro de la Paz in Chile, featuring a bright red fire station, raised black walkway, and a playground. He built this. Now, yes, it is a red building, as maybe should be a fire station. I don't know. I don't think he's. He has a level of purity, and there is some kind of chromatic constructivism, but I think he's better with small works than with large works. Although the last theater that I'm going to show, the last work after this one, has some interesting parts. This one is okay too, it's not, but I'm not very surprised. We have seen such buildings. As for the colors he chose, the red and the black, well, black I know is not considered a color, but let's call it a color, red and black. In a way, it's what I was referring to when I mentioned Eros and Thanatos. Eros, redness, Thanatos, blackness. Now, this is the last work I show today, Teatro Regional del Biobío in Chile. They won the competition. The architects developed a design with a contrasting. They won a competition in 2011, but this was opened very recently, like 8 years later. The architects developed a design with a contrasting interior and exterior appearance based on a quote by the Polish theater director Tadeusz Kantor. My packagings were an attempt to portend the nature of the object by hiding it, enveloping it. A skin of here I remember what I said about Pierluigi Nervi and about the honesty of exposed concrete and structure and so on. Here is a different kind of attempt where you use the mask or the packaging, but you do it in a way, I don't know how to say, you use the mask, but sincerely so. You will understand why I say this, because the mask is actually, it is hiding, but it's not hiding the fact that it is a mask. A skin of semi-transparent polytetrafluoroethylene PTFE is laid over a regimented concrete framework to create this duality. During the day, I'm not very impressed. But when I see that the light goes through it and beneath it or underneath it, behind it, it's something else. When I first saw this image, I was not impressed at all. I said, Smiljan Radic is becoming, rather banal. But when I see this and when I saw models of what is happening inside, because inside is a forest of columns, very different. In fact, you see the insinuation of the inside at night through the lantern-like enclosure. then it becomes interesting. So it's the same thin material, translucent material that he used for the Serpentine pavilion. And this is what it is inside, reminding one of a scaffolding, which is related to theater and to the backstage manipulations. In this sense, it is an interesting theater. Okay, and now we go to the third architect I will talk about today, and that is Paolo Soleri, the Italian Paolo Soleri, who took Arizona by storm, so to speak, by creating nothing else but a city, and with bare hands, so to speak. So Paolo Soleri, happy birthday, Mr. Soleri. He lived a long life. He was 94 when he died. And this was the man who left Italy in order to build in the United States. And he succeeded partially by building the beginning of a different kind of city. And he worked with volunteers, he worked with students from all over the world who arrived in Arizona to help him build his dream. And this is very moving. Indeed, the idealism is needed. And he had idealism in him, and he talked about ecology a long time before the actual, the concerns with ecology that we have today. Here is the man, and he lived there, and he built there, and for him architecture was not a business. He supported himself and everyone in the campus by selling, they made bells of copper, and they received donations, they sold these things, and with the purpose of building a city, nothing less than a city. A very interesting man, Paolo Soleri. He might be called, using the expectable word, visionary, a visionary architect. But I think the word could be a little bit misleading. I think any good architect is visionary, because you need to have a vision, something you believe in and you strive towards. So Paolo Soleri was born the 21st of June in 1919, was an Italian architect. He established the educational Cosanti Foundation and Arcosanti. Arcosanti is the name also of the city he started. Soleri was a lecturer in the College of Architecture at Arizona State University and the National Design Award recipient in 2006. He coined the concept of arcology, a synthesis of architecture and ecology as the philosophy of democratic society. He died at home of natural causes in 2013 at the age of 93. Soleri authored several books, including The Bridge Between Matter and Spirit, Is Matter Becoming Spirit, and Arcology. The City in the Image of Man. And I think the titles of these books say it all. The bridge between matter and spirit. And then the word spirit and the word matter show up again. Is matter becoming spirit? I think in great architecture, matter has to become spirit. And you cannot neglect the spiritual side of the pursuit of architecture. You transform matter into spirit, into something, I use the word exaltation. It's about that. The raw material of matter, you transform through creative work into something exalting. Or He tried to approximate this through the word spirit. And I'll show some drawings by him. He did all kinds of studies, and you know, he was truly imagining a different world, terra nova. Like Martin Luther King, he could have said, I have a dream. And his dream was Arcosanti, to build a different kind of city. And I think it's important to have a dream or dreams, because in their absence, what is the alternative? What do you do? We are born halfway between the mountain of the gods and the mountain of the animals, as Paul Klee said. And I keep quoting Paul Klee in this beautiful thought he had, that there are two mountains, the mountain of the gods and the mountain of the animals. The mountain of the gods, they who know, they know, and the mountain of the animals, they who do not know, they do not know. And between these two mountains is the crepuscular valley of man, they who know, they do not know. But it is exactly because man knows he or she doesn't know that had to create, you know, a symphony, novel, a building. Exactly because we know we do not know. From that insufficiency. What made Soleri make these drawings? Nobody asked him to do these drawings, to imagine a different kind of city. Well, he did it because he felt incomplete, and he wanted to assert his quest for completeness through creativity. I'm not saying that in a way, maybe Nietzsche was right. Greatness is about a conjunction between modesty and audacity. His work is audacious. He's apparently not very modest. But I believe actually Soleri was a modest man, but he had almost pharaonic dreams, but not advocating, you know, theocracy or capitalist technocracy. No, it's a quest for a different kind of collective democratic architecture, animated by ideals. And we are going to see what he actually built. It was incredible that he thought actually of building a city, and he began to build it. Not alone, of course, but helped by idealistically oriented volunteers from all over the world. The man took his role very seriously, as you can see. He was trying to oppose to the city of the present a different kind of city, a city born from a vision. What he built from this, which itself was a fragment, was just this part here that you see in a darker tone here. That's all he succeeded to build, but it's not so little, because this in itself represents several buildings, not the smallest in the world. Paolo Soleri, himself born on the 21st of June, just like Smiljan Radic and Pierluigi Nervi. And somehow something connects all these people, although Smiljan Radic is perhaps a little bit different, but all three architects actually say the same thing: live creatively. That's it. Here are the bells that I mentioned that, you know, because many tourists visited Arcosanti in Arizona and, you know, they bought a souvenir, which was a bell, and, you know, they made a little bit of money in this way as well. But they manufactured them. So this visionary architect didn't turn his back on manual work. In fact, he welcomed manual work. This is the only work that I know of that he built in Italy before he left for the United States. It is a ceramic tiles factory. It's a factory in, I think, in southern Italy. Here is the man. You know, maybe a short time after he arrived in Arizona, I don't know. We already saw this picture of him in his older age. He seemed to be a little bit worried. Anyway, welcome to Arcosanti, an urban laboratory. And we should have laboratories everywhere, in our own room, in the school, on the street, in the parks, have laboratories to experiment, to search for new things, to try things out. Who knows, some might work, some might not. Arcosanti. So you see here Soleri wind bells, those bells that I mentioned made of copper that he sold. The hand, the fact that the hand was not neglected is very, very important. Giving an interview, I guess. A dreamer, no doubt. But what would life be without these dreamers? You tell me. A bore. What an audacity, you know, to start to build a city in the desert. Incredible. With bare hands in a way, you know. I mean, it's amazing that he stirred up the imagination of so many people who came here to offer their work for something they themselves started to believe in, obviously. Look at them. They are beautiful. People who came from all over the world to help Soleri build his dream, which became their dream. And we need such idealists badly everywhere in the world. We need it because we can do beautiful things together. They didn't work for money. They didn't receive salaries. It's very possible some of them contributed themselves with money to the erection of the new city. And here they are in a circle, you know, talking, exchanging ideas, debating, living. In a way, what we see here is building, thinking, dwelling, not necessarily in this order, by Heidegger. You know, you live in a place, you build in that place, and of course you think in that place. And I would add feeling in that place. But, you know, I guess behind the thinking is also feeling or emotion. But this is a generous idea to live and work and build in the same place. And this is what they did there, just like in Arcosanti. And I'm sure they had fun. You know, they work hard, but they also had parties and gatherings and so on. An inspiring activity coming essentially from this man. He must have been very gratified to see that he stirred up the imagination of so many people. When you have a dream, you might fail. It's possible. There are all kinds of circumstances in life. But if you don't have a dream, you fail for sure. If you have a dream, you might fail, but you might also succeed. He succeeded, not perfectly, not totally, but he succeeded. This is a bridge he built outside of Arcosanti, I think in Phoenix, Arizona. But his major work is Arcosanti. And here are the wind bells, you know, a gesture of negotiation with life, but without giving up on art. This is in the proximity of the bridge in Phoenix, Arizona. This is one of the buildings, a fragment of the building that they built in Arcosanti. Isn't this so-called imperfection of building or whatever beautiful? It is. It's like an ornament. Why not? Imperfections, so-called imperfections, have their own beauty, at least sometimes. It's a heroic architecture, of course, a Zarathustrian architecture. But I think we need such experiments in the world. This was not built for real estate speculative work, no. As Louis Kahn said, the beginnings are in harmony with the human nature. What we look at here is a beginning. And maybe not more than a beginning, but it's already a lot being a beginning there in the desert. Exhibitions, he did many exhibitions all over the world with his models and his drawings and so on. And the young people, curious, they look at them and then maybe they buy a ticket to fly to Arizona and contribute. Beautiful. Because I do believe what Stephen Hall said is true. The soul needs the ideal more than the real. It is the ideal that animates the real, that transforms matter into spirit. Paolo Soleri. Now, you see, this is found furniture, right? I mean, this is from a car, from a vehicle. It's okay. You have a, you know, a heroic vision for a future city. You don't have time any longer and money to, well, time you might have, but you don't have the money to invest too much in first. So whatever you find, you know, it's okay. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfect aesthetics or high-end, you know, furniture. I like these wind bells. They're modest and, you know, they belong to the earth in a way. The ornament is also present as it is present on the skin of the bells. And then the visionary urbanist and the visionary architect. As I said, he only built this part here. Who knows, maybe at one time the extraterrestrials will come down to Earth to continue the work by Paolo Soleri. But I like this duality. On one hand, grandiose structures, and on the other hand, the modesty of these handmade artifacts. Ceramic tiles as well, and this is significant. You know, the earth, the tile, the clay, the incisions of the human hand and sensitivity on the tile. So there is no contradiction between this and this. This takes part in the larger work. They had a ceramics studio there, so it shows that Soleri also welcomed arts and crafts. And this is his own house there, the cave within Arcosanti. Very, very nice. I would say beautiful. I would say Gaudi was his friend, and not just Gaudi, Doshi too, and other people, other dreamers. This is the house, this is the private quarter of Paolo Soleri. And you see here that there are insinuations of also of his love for the Native American Indian culture in that area, which shows that the futurist, the visionary was not indifferent to the local cultures of the place he lived in. Here he is smoking and dreaming, dreaming and smoking. Again, his own cave. This is that factory he built in Italy, again for ceramic tiles, and back to Arizona, to Arcosanti, drawings of Arcosanti. Very interesting plan. If you look at it, you wouldn't say that this is an urban planning. It's a different kind of so-called planning. The city of the future. All this was done with work, with effort, even with sacrifices, of course. But I think there was also joy. And you see the rainbow, you know, announcing some kind of a marriage between nature and the work of man in auspicious terms. And I like these open beams here that anticipate future developments. It's all about becoming. Hello, Mr. Soleri. Happy birthday to you. You see how modest he is? I don't think he had any, you know, properties. He just had his beloved city of the future, which is not a little thing at all. He was not a bourgeois. He didn't have his 3 cars or 5 cars and 5 TVs and 10 sofas and 6 refrigerators. No, his concerns were different. He wanted to invent, to reinvent the world. Terra Nova. Art as process, life as process, the journey more important than the goal. But this is the interior of the factory he built in Italy before he left for the United States. Even here, there is an anticipation of interesting things in architecture. This is not a banal building either, and he was very young when he built it. I'm not sure if it's in Sicily or in Torino, in Turin. Well, his major work is Arco Santi in the desert of the United States, in Arizona. He earned his life. When I look at this picture, I would say this man earned his life. And not just him, but also those people who helped him. They all earned their lives by doing something that is creative. Here is a play that, these probably very talented people in various fields, the people who came to help him, animated by the spirit of the place, they created these shows for themselves, because we need playing, we need entertainment in this way as well, and it's done creatively by the very people, not hired people from somewhere else. This was done by the people who also erected these structures, and look at them enjoying eating together. Most surely food they prepare themselves. This beautiful togetherness should inspire us. We can do a lot together when we unite ourselves and stop being so concerned with our little little being, with our little concern, no. That promotes fear. This is about love. This is about being open, being connected, only connect. And these people are connected under the dome, or yes, I call it dome. It's not quite a dome, but under the structure they themselves built. They cooked, they eat together, they talk, they exchange ideas, they perform, and they build. So you have an ideal structure here, an idealistic structure, and underneath it you have the human hands. I don't use the word in a pejorative sense at all. As the human beings can do a lot. Look at them. These very people erected this and erected this. That's it. So happy birthday, Paolo Soleri. And with this, I end the presentation today. Hopefully, I